I want to begin with a little bit of Bible exegesis for you here. I don't do it very often, but I thought today made some sense. This is the story of Jacob. Jacob, the son of Isaac. Isaac, the son of Abraham. If you're following your biblical narrative there, Abraham was the one who was going to sacrifice Isaac, and his hand was stayed by God, by an angel at the last minute. So Isaac had a little bit of trauma in his life, and he marries, and he has a couple of sons. Well, his wife has a couple of sons, Esau and Jacob. They're twins, actually. Esau comes out first, and Jacob is holding on to his heel. And that was the story, as it is so often in biblical narratives, of the second son wanting to be something more than the first. It should be familiar in many families, I think, too, whether it's brothers or sisters. Esau was the one who was going to inherit his father's tribe, his father's livestock. His inheritance was going to be given to him. And Esau was known as a big, hairy, kind of brutish guy. And Jacob was wily and smooth, and he was mama's favorite. And Jacob decides he's going to steal the inheritance from his brother. So he dresses up in a goat skin. And he goes and tries to get his voice really deep like this and say, "Father, I need my inheritance now." And he goes, and the father says, "I can't see you," because Isaac had gone blind. "I can't see you, but let me feel you." And he feels the goat skin. He goes, "Oh, yeah, that's my son Esau. Sure. I'm going to give you my inheritance. Here, take it with you, and you can start your new family now." And Jacob takes the money, and he runs. And he leaves. He leaves the promised land, and he goes to see his mother's brother, his Uncle Laban. And Uncle Laban has a pretty large tribe of his own, and he has two daughters, Leah, who's the oldest one, who was considered to be somewhat homely, whatever that means, and Rachel, who is the most beautiful. And Jacob wants to marry Rachel, and Laban says, "Well, yeah, okay, 7 years hard labor with me." So that's what he does, 7 years. And then at the very end of the 7 years, he thinks he's marrying Rachel, but they're all wearing veils, and he goes to the marriage bed that night, and it's Leah instead. And Laban says, "Well, I don't know how you do things where you come from, but here we always let the first daughter get married first." And he goes, "Well, you tricked me. I wanted to marry Rachel." I don't know how Leah feels about all this. This is all messed up, man. It's the Bible for you. And Rachel, he goes, "Well, I want Rachel." Okay, Laban says 7 more years. So now 14 years, and now he's got 2 wives. He's got 12 kids. He's got all this livestock. He's become quite wealthy. And he decides the time has come for him to return home. Now, his father was dead. He knew his father, Isaac, had died. And so he sent message to his twin brother, Esau, and he said, "I'm coming back." And he didn't really get an answer. So he says, "Well, I'm going to go anyway." And so they all migrate, and they get to this river. And Jacob says, "I'm going to send the rest of the gang over the river, and I've got to stay back here. I've got to get my head straight for this, because, my brother could kill me. I don't know what's going to happen." So he falls asleep. And he actually falls asleep. He has 2 dreams, but this is the dream that I want to talk about, is when the angel starts to wrestle with him in the middle of the night. And they're wrestling, and they're evenly matched. And he asks for the angel's name, and the angel won't give it to him. And instead, he gives him a hard blow to his hip. And he dislocates his hip. And now Jacob's got the angel in a headlock. And he says, "I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." And the angel says, "Okay. You've been called Jacob, which means to grasp." For all the Jacobs in the world, that's what it means, to grasp. "From now on, you will be known as Israel, for you have striven with God." That wrestling with the angel, that famous scene in the Bible, then changes Jacob. He's been this passive player, sometimes a little more wily. Drama of his destiny, he was going to overcome. He was a mama's boy. He was a trickster. He was worried now about his older brother. He was ignored by his father. He was tricked by his father-in-law. And he's trapped then in this darkness of the soul, and he wants to somehow make amends with the only remaining family he has, which is Esau. And so with this self-reliance, he's going to do the right thing, and now he's ready to go. He's ready to cross the river. But he's asking himself as he's doing this, is this really where I want to go? Do I really want to go back to the land that's really promised? Where am I migrating to? Or am I really just here to reconcile with my brother Esau? And in the very outward and literal sense, Jacob was returning to his homeland, but he was also returning to his destiny and returning to his guilt. If we look further into the story, and I think there's a lot here, we can see that traveling to the promised land is also about reconciliation. It's about love. It's about making right what is wrong. But his promised land would not be possible until he completed this most important task, and the task that we all have to complete, which is the promise of our own integrity. And I've been thinking about integrity a lot these days as we've watched on the frozen streets of Minneapolis people fighting back against ICE agents. I've been thinking of people, children in Denison, Texas, who are sitting there without their parents in a detention camp, in a concentration camp. I've been thinking about people who have been spirited away just even here in King of Prussia. It's happening now all around us, and I'm thinking about the integrity that we as good-meaning people must keep in our hearts in order to face this kind of injustice. Wrestling with the angels is a powerful symbol in mythology. It refers to a celestial force, yes, but it also refers, more importantly, to the force, the divine within us. Prevailing through the night as he did, Jacob was given this new name and a renewed identity. And he would use that identity to ask for forgiveness from his brother. He would do all he could to make this physical dislocation of his hip a reminder of the spiritual dislocation of his soul, which he was trying to put back into place. So where is our promised land, right, folks? In this winter of our desperation, as the masked federales, the true embodiment of their name, ICE agents, drag old men and women and children through the icy streets of our cities into unmarked cars, while we in outrage hold these phones up as if they were candles in the wind, shouting for justice, right? We, the massive we of this country, the massive exhausted majority of this country, crying in this moral dislocation of the very joints of our civility, we are raising our voices and we say, where is our promised land? Do you hear me? David Brooks, who was once considered the scribe of conservatives, who now seems quite liberal, how far we have come. He wrote a closing piece in the New York Times. He's leaving his position there, and he said, large majorities say our country is in decline, that experts are not to be trusted, that the elites care nothing about regular people, that only 13% of young adults think America's heading in the right direction, and 69% of us think there is no longer such a thing as the American dream. Loss of faith produces a belief in nothing. Trump is nihilism personified, with his assumption that morality is for suckers, that life is about power and force and bullying and cruelty. Global populists seek to create a world which only the ruthless can thrive in, and America has become the rabid wolf of nations. It's tempting to say that Trump corrupted America, but the shredding of the values from the top was preceded by a decades-long collapse of values from within. 4 decades of hyper-individualism expanded individual choice, but weakened the bonds between people. And multiple generations of students and parents fled from the humanities and the liberal arts, driven by belief that the prime purpose of education was to make money. Brooks said that we're abandoning our humanistic core. I'm not sure I agree totally with him there, but I do understand what he's saying when he says the elements of civilization that lift spirit and nurture empathy and orient the soul are playing a diminished role in America today. And the grievous cultural wound that has been the loss of our shared moral order is at the hip of our lives. We are told that multiple generations need to come up with their own values, building your own theology. Anyone? That the privatization of morality has burdened people with a task that they can simply not know what to do. That we have had that happen to us. I have been talking to you in these weeks, some of you saying, I do not know what to do. There's no broad agreement about what is true and beautiful and good. And without those standards, it's very difficult for us to imagine a trusting world. But beloveds, the good news is this: all is not lost. I do not believe it is lost. I have to believe, and this is more than optimism. As Havel said, this is really about hope. It's possible to reach the land of promise beyond what is so cold and barren now. Do you hear me here? It will require protest and voting and action and the things we're starting to do. And, Pat Jordan, Barbara Welsh being out there in the cold, getting blown over by the wind. Bless you. Bless you for standing there. As Frances said to me when they called off the protest, she's like, how can they call off a protest? And I thought, well, they can, because there's going to be more protests, right? And there will be more protests, because protests are what we have right now. We have to take to the streets because it's the only thing that we can do. But as Jacob found in his struggle, and what we are finding now, I believe, is that we need to reinvent the moral culture in which we live. Not a culture of theater and opera, but the culture of decency and beauty and love, which is embodied in our lives and our families and this church. And I mean everything that shapes the spirit of this age, the moral, the intellectual movement, all that constitutes the shared water in which we swim. We can do this, friends. We can do this, and we can do it right here. This can be the place where we begin a new moral ecology. Amen. This building, right here, right now, or outside of this building, right here, right now. We are the promised land. That's the news. We are the promised land. An old friend called me last week. He said a former parishioner of mine had died quite suddenly with what his family thought was the common cold. He was 45 years old. I'd been his minister in sunnier times, in a world where love seemed easier to find and give. He had been so active in that church, helping those who needed help. He built ramps for people who needed to get into their homes. He fixed a roof. He collected food. He started a food festival in the shared bounty of the oyster beds of Connecticut's Long Island Sound. It became a nationally known food fair called Oyster Fest. Nationally recognized, raising millions of dollars in a weekend to feed hungry people. I remember him being so frustrated with the church, because churches move at a glacial speed. It takes a long time for us to make a decision. But he didn't wait. He moved forward, and we kind of bumped along. His life was full of promise and I love it, overcommitment. And he painted large, impossible canvases like this one from George Miller. This isn't his, but something like that. He embodied the promised land, but it could have been any of us. Can you hear me on this? It's important. We who hear spread love. We who hear help a friend. We who hear do the right thing sometimes even when we're being taken advantage of. And are we the ones to spread the love? I can't quite hear you, but are we the ones to help those in need? Are we the ones who are going to stand in the cold and hold up our cameras to the abuses of our government? Are we or are we not? And are we brave enough, friends, to be the place of resistance through joy itself, through music and joy that rises above indignation? And are we ready to build that new land, and can we start right here? Yes. The promise starts here, friends. It starts with our doubts, it starts with our judgments, it starts with our fears, it starts even with our prejudices. And every great leader in the world has wrestled with their angels. Mother Teresa, Mohammed in his encounter with Gabriel, the Buddha in the temptation of Mira, the god of death, Jesus and the devil, promising him world power. And each prophet has had to find a way to become their better selves. We all have these struggles, and we all have to overcome them because the world out there needs us now more than ever. Prophet telling is not so much the future as it is telling the truth. For someone like Martin Luther King Jr., who had plenty of struggles to overcome, the promised land was not just about his people, but about himself. He was aware of his shortcomings. Let's not say he wasn't. He knew about his anger. He knew about his infidelity. He knew about his impatience. He was aware of how important this was to not let those shortcomings stop his work. And Taylor Branch, in his last and most sentient book, At Canaan's Edge, talks about this moment towards the end of his life when he was struggling with these failings, when his marriage was in real trouble, how he fought inside of himself to be the prophet that he still knew he could be. I close with this. The night before Dr. King was murdered, he gave a speech at a rally in support of sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. Here he is addressing a group of garbage men and their families about rights and dignity. And as with a premonition, he said at the end of his speech, like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned with that now. I want to do God's will. And he allowed me to go up to the mountain, he said, and I looked it over, and I've seen the promised land, he said, and I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. How do we prevail? How do we overcome the shortcomings? We do this with love in our hearts, friends. We have to do it with love in our hearts. I heard the other day that heaven may be only 18 inches away. The difference from your heart to your mind. Maybe that's all it is. That we need to understand that we have a deeper calling. No matter where we are in life, no matter even if we're comfortable, go sit by the fire, warm up, get yourself something nice to drink, but let's get out into the world. Because our hearts are beating in the right direction now. You can hear it in our music. You can hear it in the justice work we're doing. You can hear it in how we take care of one another. When Jacob crossed over into his homeland, he sent word to his brother Esau that he was coming, and now he was really full of trepidation. He was all by himself. What was his brother going to do? And he could see in the distance that there was Esau, big and hairy as ever, and a bunch of other people behind him. They were all running towards Jacob. He's like, uh-oh. He didn't know what was coming. But as Esau drew closer, Jacob could see the most remarkable thing. He had his arms out. He was running to hug his brother. As they embraced, Jacob realized that his worst fears were within him, that his brother had moved beyond the struggles of the past and was overjoyed to welcome him home to the promised land, perhaps to this promised land. May our journey in the year before us bring us closer to home than ever before, starting with our own beating hearts, that we open again to the transcendence of love. So may it be, and amen.